Activate your energy.
Welcome to the Activated Authors Podcast, a show where we distill the core principles of what it takes to become a happy, healthy, and productive author, no matter what stage of the journey you're at. I'm your host, Daniel Willcocks. I'm an international best-selling author, as well as an author coach, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. But most importantly, I'm a lifelong student of all things productivity, psychology, and human behavior. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Without further ado, let's dive in.
What is up, activators? Welcome to another episode of the Activated Authors Podcast. My name is Sam Frost, and today I am delighted to be turning the tables and interviewing your usual host, Daniel Willcocks. Say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Of course. Daniel Willcocks is an international best-selling author and award-winning podcaster of dark fiction. He is an author coach, founder, and CEO of Activated Authors. One quarter of Digital Story Studio. We're just going to roll with it. Hawk and Cleaver, co-founder of iTunes busting fiction podcast, The Other Stories, CEO of horror imprint Devil's Rock Publishing, and host of the Activated Authors Podcast. Not today, bitches. Dan is enormously passionate about creativity and productivity. He has written 60 plus books since 2015 for himself and on behalf of ghostwriting clients. His mission in life is to activate creatives and authors to ensure they keep their creative flames and passions burning in a sustainable, positive, and healthy way. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
That was a mouthful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to lie. It took more than one go and I still messed it up, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it.
Two goes.
Two goes.
Don't be so hard on yourself. That was a good effort.
Oh, thanks. I mean, yeah. All right, sure. I'll take it. How are you today, please? And thank you, sir. And welcome.
Yeah, it's weird being on this side of the table. Not like in the sense of like I've been on podcasts and stuff before, but to be on the other side on your own podcast is a very strange feeling. But yeah, I'm doing all right. Thank you. How are you? I'm good.
I'm just thinking, so this is the first time you've been on your own podcast. So is the oil painting next?
What?
That's commonly dictators will have
yeah
commissioned of themselves.
Yeah, the further ahead I go, the bigger my ego grows, the more grandiose my aims get, until I work myself into my own little bubble of indignity.
Amazing.
That's the dream. It's not the dream.
Not the dream. Also, your own bubble of indignity sounds like you need a thorough wash.
Yeah, it's probably overdue. It's a very warm day in Britain at the minute.
It is. I'm also in Britain, and I'm also balmy.
Yes, yeah. It is warm.
Right, now, obviously, like you say, you are usually the host of this here show. Mm-hmm. So you are normally asking other people what their journey is. So I am going to flip the script. Not again, because then you would be back to the host, but just for everybody listening, tell us about how you got here, your creative journey, where you've been, maybe a holiday. Go. Yeah.
So I think it's 2017. I went to Cornwall. That was fun. No, I don't know. It's a long journey to go through. So I started writing properly in 2015, and by properly, I mean that was the first time I kind of penned something substantial that I got to the end of and wrote the end and published that first book. But I've always been interested in words. I've always been interested in English. And I guess sort of, writing for many people is the goal when it comes to, loving reading, loving books, loving all that kind of stuff. But I came into writing through a bit of a different path, through editing and proofreading. And I essentially, when I came out of university back in 2012, was running my own free running and parkour business and going around the county and teaching and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So that was what my intention was. That's what I wanted to do for the next 10, 20, 30 years, however long that, I had the grace of my body to fuel me. And that goal lasted about a year because I broke my wrist and things kind of got a bit difficult after that, and many other reasons. But when I came out of teaching free running and doing all that stuff, I was looking at, what the opportunities are to do something with the degree that I had. And I did my degree in English and drama. And I was like, okay, how can I use English to propel me forward? Because I really enjoyed, weirdly, in my final year of the drama side of things, I wrote a stage play that did pretty well for itself, and got put forward. Well, I got put forward as a writer for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, but unfortunately couldn't make it because of finances. poor student.
No.
Yeah. And the thing I really liked about that process was you had to be very, very meticulous with the actual proofreading and grammar of what the stage play needed to look like. So I found it really, really therapeutic sitting there and being like, there should be a full stop here, and actually there's too many spaces, and the name needs to be there, and all the different formatting. And so at the time, my partner at the time, her mum ran her own editing business and kind of took me under her wing and helped me find work as an editor, as a proofreader. I got involved in the Society for Editors and Proofreaders, which it was at the time. It's not anymore. I'm not sure what it is now. It's a totally different name, but it's like the UK kind of like body to regulate and help editors and proofreaders. And I did a lot of nonfiction academic journals for different clients for a couple of years. And then just got very interested in the publication side of stuff. So I secured myself an internship working in the publications team for the University of Lincoln, and did that for a year. Working on prospectuses and magazines and writing copy and proofreading and photos and design, and kind of just seeing all the behind the scenes stuff, which was really, really exciting. And then it was around that time, it wasn't long after that me and, again, my partner at the time fell pregnant. My son was on the way, and the internship ended, and I was kind of like, okay, what can I do from here? This is a very, very long roundabout way of answering your question. But I then ran my own business for 2 years. I secured some funding to start my own editing business properly. Did that, kind of stumbled across KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, which is kind of, for people who haven't quite got there yet, it's where you go to put up your book on Amazon and get that published. And figured, I wrote a stage play. Let's see if I can put this on Amazon, just out of my own curiosity. I didn't care if it sold. I just wanted my book on the shelf. Which that experiment went well. I got it up, like the book came out well, and the formatting, everything looked good, because I was very determined at that point. I understood the importance of making a book look like a book. And I had come across a few self-published books at the time that were just poorly formatted, and you open them and immediately you have no confidence in the content because what you expect isn't there. And so I did that once with a stage play, and then I was gifted a book of short stories for a Secret Santa present. Read some short stories and was like, I really want to write a short story. That turned into a novella. I published that novella, again, put it up just to have it on my shelf. And that book went to #1 over Halloween of 2015 in the horror charts.
Yeah, it did.
And it's kind of been a journey from there. Like there's so many things to sprinkle in, because, as I say, I never started with the intention of being a writer and selling books. I started with the intention of just wanting to publish something to put on my shelf. And over the years, what I've done a lot of is networked with authors, worked with other authors, collaborated on books, really tried to understand the process of publishing. And then in 2019, managed to get myself full-time as an author, went into writing my own books, ghostwriting as well, and writing a lot for other clients. And then as of 2020, then sort of started stumbling into coaching authors. So I guess you can kind of see the coaching trajectory from parkour and the elements as I go through life, and that kind of circles itself back round. But yeah, there are lots of milestones along the way, but probably too many to get into in the intro.
Well, what I am actually really interested in, because you are not a stranger, shall we say, this is not your first rodeo being interviewed on a podcast, so I imagine that you get quite used to kind of delivering a synopsis of your life, essentially. And it always seems to start, not that I've listened to any of your interviews, because some of us have lives, some of us don't, but it always seems to start around 2015. So I'm interested, let's go back, not womb back, but further back. When was kind of your first bite of creativity? When was the first time that you can remember, whether it's writing or, I don't know, making a sandcastle or whatever it was, where you did something and you kind of went,
I guess the earliest example of anything sort of creative, I think, is just reading. I'm the middle child between an older brother and a younger sister. Obviously, listeners who listen to the show know my younger sister has been on this and is doing awesome things. But yeah, my brother was kind of an example for me in a lot of ways, and not in many other ways. But He wasn't, I don't think he's read a book to this day, but I was the kid in the family that would just seek out books and read books and just enjoy the story. And obviously, I do wonder if that'd be different growing up these days, when obviously there's so many more digital distractions. Like it's kind of easy to forget that, back then that wasn't an option. Like you had to fill the time with other things like music or whatever it was. And I did. I really enjoyed reading from quite a young age. There was a book called Mr. Meddle's Mischief, which I read cover to cover many times. The famous five, sort of going into early books. And then as I got older, I just found myself very interested in sort of fantasy. Like I remember one of my dad's friends who used to like to brag that he was a member of Mensa. that's probably not one of the things that I remember of him. Lent me The Hobbit, and I read through that and loved that, and then lent me The Lord of the Rings, and that was much more of a struggle compared to The Hobbit at the time.
1007 pages plus appendices.
And he also gave me Terry Pratchett's Colour of Magic, which I was way too young for at the time. I think like it took me a few attempts to read that. Like it's a fantastic book, but God, is it dense. And so like I read a lot, and I also just enjoyed drawing just as a therapeutic thing. I have a memory of me sitting on my stomach on the carpet in front of the TV while my mum's watching something and drawing an elephant on a piece of paper. And the main memory is two very, very vivid parts of that memory. Number one, the smell of the paper. Like the smell of paper just takes me back to that moment now. But also the effort of trying to draw a picture on paper on carpet without any backing.
Yeah, that was. I know you were a child, but that was a rookie error. Why?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know why an elephant. I don't know why then, but I think I probably was about maybe 5 or 6. It's a very, very blurry memory. And then I don't know. I've always kind of flexed without realizing it, the creative muscle. So I've always paid attention to words. I've always been interested in poetry. And then I have a memory of being probably about maybe 7 or 8 and sitting at the dining room on my dad's laptop trying to pen a novel. And it was, I don't know, I don't even know why. I have no idea where it came from, but it was just a blank words page. And obviously, you're looking at like Windows 95, 96 at this point, wherever it was.
The golden age.
The golden era of computing. And something like, I remember writing a few lines, something about a dwarf, and then going like, oh, screw this, this is too hard, and just scrapping the whole lot and walking away. But yeah, I don't know. And kind of from there, I went into, when I was 11, I asked for a keyboard for Christmas, and then I taught myself how to play piano, as is the next logical step from that. I bought the kind of teach yourself books.
Of course it is.
Yeah. I got a guitar when I was 14. Like, I won't delve too deeply into the story, but I was essentially given it by an ex after we broke up, which as a 15-year-old makes no sense.
Right, hold on, just pause a second. So you'd broken up?
Yes.
What was the time
Not on good terms.
Oh, even better. Okay, So what was the time period between you breaking up and you receiving this guitar?
About 4 weeks.
Okay, so maybe it was an attempt at reconciliation.
Potentially. I don't profess to understand the motives at the time. It was a very interesting period. But yeah, so I was bequeathed a guitar, which
you weren't. She didn't die. She didn't die, right?
So I was given a guitar. No, she's fine. And yeah, I taught myself how to play that. And when I say taught myself, I had sort of like friends who played the instrument that taught me odd bits here and there, but there was something, I don't know what it is. There's something that I just really enjoy about the learning process, about, looking at something step by step and just going, I'm going to try this. And it's kind of like continued over the years. I taught myself how to juggle. I taught myself how to play with Diablos, like the yo-yos on the sticks. At one point, I taught myself how to solve Rubik's Cubes, and I've lost that ability, so I'm trying to relearn it now.
Oh yeah, well, pictures or it didn't happen. We can all say at one point we taught ourselves how to do the Rubik's Cube, but conveniently, I can't remember anymore.
Just for the people on the podcast, I'm reaching into my pocket, and as we talk, I'm going to do my best to try and solve this, or at least get to where I get stuck on, because there's like the last bit that I get stuck on. But yeah, so I have just the sound effects for the podcast as well. Oh, love that sound. But yeah, so
riveting.
This is a first for the Activated Authors podcast. I feel like Will Smith in that film that he did the Rubik's Cube in.
Yeah. That one film.
Pursuit of Happiness. There we go. Probably shouldn't delve too deeply into that.
No.
But yeah, so there's always been something. I enjoy different things, and I enjoy learning. And interestingly, like that's not something that I realized until I was older, because there was always that part of being a kid where learning is because it's the thing you have to do.
It's not cool.
You don't see the value in it.
No.
And I was a weird kid. Like I was massively into Frank Sinatra. I was massively into Elton John, and so like I listened to a lot of piano music. I really liked I'm trying to think who it was. Just the people that I kind of idolized. I don't think were the typical people you idolize. Like it was Chandler Bing was one of my biggest idols. Not Matthew Perry, Chandler Bing specifically. Damon Wayans from
My Wife and Kids.
Mm-hmm. These are all the people that I followed, that I loved, because they were I don't know. I think because, and again, it's a thing I've got to be careful to delve into, because he's not this anymore, but like me and my brother had a very rocky relationship growing up, and I think seeing that example of things, I very much wanted to veer away from that. And so I definitely looked to the kinder, more inspirational side of life of the people that, you know, were trying to better themselves without harming other people, as a bit of an example. So yeah, it's like there's lots of examples of where creativity has kind of sprung from. And it's just been like we had the option of picking two different subjects at school when you got to sort of year 10 and 11, which for people over in the US, you're about 15, 16 then. And I was desperate to do music and drama. Like I wanted to do two creative arts subjects, and I had to really convince my parents, because they wanted me to do something more, quote, academic, even though I was sort of doing very well in English, maths and sciences and stuff. And somehow I convinced them to let me do those two subjects. And just there's something so freeing around surrounding yourself with artists, and just seeing, I think with a lot of academic subjects, and I don't mean to stereotype, and I'm not like trying to insult anyone, because like there's obviously individuality in all different things, but there was always that sense of like in those subjects you had to fit the mold to understand the knowledge, whereas the expressiveness of art and the possibilities are so much wider, and in a way there's nothing you can really do wrong. And so I was drawn to that, and then kind of the journey continued from there. But like I say, there's, you know, examples of like I was published at 12, but then there were a lot of kids in my school in like a local poetry school book.
Do you still have that book? Can you do us a reading?
I do have that book. I will not do a reading.
Well, it's worth a shot. Sorry, guys.
It's about a TV, and it makes no sense.
Of course it's about a TV. Why wouldn't it be?
Why the hell not? But yeah, lots of examples.
Well, I have
getting pressure on this Rubik's Cube now. What have I done?
Yeah, and rightly so. Rightly so, you should feel pressure because you put it on yourself. You already said that. Anyway, moving on. A couple of things you said there that I'd like to kind of dive into a little bit, if you will permit me. You were saying that the people that you kind of were inspired by, the people that you looked up to, were not kind of your, you know, typical people that most 12-year-olds at the time would like look at and go, wow, they're amazing. But on hearing you list them out, what I would argue is that they were all very like uniquely themselves. They were all forging their own path, and they were all masters of their craft. I just wondered, maybe is there something in that, do you think? Like, do you think there's some that you've taken moving forward in your life, any of kind of that as inspiration for where you want to head? And I don't mean, do you want to put on a unitard and do a Frank Sinatra impression? I was mixing.
I was going to say, I've not seen that performance.
I'm mixing Elton John and you know. Yeah. But I just wondered if that's kind of any inspiration for you in that way.
Well, I mean, before I answer that, this is as far as I get with the Rubik's Cube. So it's mostly done bar a top level that I need to remind myself on.
Right. For people that are listening and not watching, Okay. He says it's mostly done. 2 sides are done. Now, I'm very aware that there is a technique and a craft to Rubik's Cubes that you can apparently learn. Dan apparently learned this one.
It's just this top level. That's all I need to do. And I can't figure it. Well, remember the algorithm.
Gotcha journalism at its finest. You can't figure it. No. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Moving on.
Yes. I mean, very, 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 very potentially. I think it was a lot of the time it was the people who excelled in what they did, but also, well, on the surface at least, happy and upbeat and provided sort of free and provided joy and energy to other people, because as we all know, like, growing up is hard. And there's so many things we don't understand. There's so many sort of influences that could take us in any direction depending on, you know, what happens at what time.
Mm-hmm.
And these were people I saw who they were just doing amazing things. And I think it's weird because me and my brother are very, very different people. Me and my sister are very, very different people, raised from the same parents. Me and my brother are a lot more in the same sort of circumstances. We moved around a lot sort of later in life. But yeah, I think I've always wondered what the limits of my potential could be.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing these people do incredible things, like, I think even early on, without consciously knowing it, I understood that you have to start somewhere. And having a passion, having a genuine joy for the thing is enough to get you started. So I remember when I got my keyboard, again, sort of, it was Christmas 2002. I was sat next to my late great nan, and she taught me just like a very quick riff on the keyboard. And then I discovered that you can watch, like, it showed you what notes it was playing, and it had the Beatles' Let It Be. And I sat there for days. Not like I slept in other stuff, but I'd returned to the keyboard over a succession of, you know, days. And after a couple of weeks, I could play Let It Be on the piano, sort of both hands, sort of very, you know, you got the bass and the melody, and like, not sort of like a simplified version, but the full version. And even to this day, like, I remember great chunks of it because it's just now ingrained in my muscle memory. But like, there was no rhyme or reason as to why I was doing it. I just, you know, I watched a lot of, again, as you do when you're 11, I watched a lot of Elton John performing in, he did like a concert in the one of the Greek Colosseums, sort of open top, gorgeous venue. And what I found amazing was you listen to his album, and I had the best of, I think it was the Rocket Man Best of album. Or it might have just been Greatest Hits. But you listen to that, and you obviously get an example of what that music is, and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful and it's clean and it's precise and everything else. And then you watch him perform those songs in a concert, and even through the screen, there's an electricity, and people are like up on their feet, and he improvs just solos in the middle of it because he's a phenomenal pianist.
Well done.
Thank you. And so always be very, very careful.
Very different story.
Yes. But just it was just astounding. And to kind of go, like, there was always that question of, how do I do that?
Yeah.
There was never a question of, I can't because of XYZ. And I think what I was trying to get to earlier with the sort of the brother and sister and comparison and stuff is, like, my parents were encouraging. They were, you know, they provided a very what I'd argue quite an easy upbringing, essentially. Like, we didn't have to sort of worry about too much stuff. And, you know, my mum was loving, my dad was supportive and there, but like, I was never pushed in a direction. I was never kind of whipped and made someone's, like, no one lived vicariously through me. It was kind of, it was all of my own making. And I honestly don't know what that inception was of kind of internal belief in stuff. I think, you know, as life goes on, you confirm more of what you believe, confirmation bias, through the things that you see. I've seen a lot of people start in one thing, go into another thing they never thought they were going to be, that was possible. As I've gone through my journey, I've gone from wanting to be one thing to going into another, And along the way, what I've gathered are a set of transferable skills that I feel confident enough that I can take into lots of different industries. So, it's a weird journey to go from parkour instructor into an author. At the same time, like in that time, I also was my ex-partner's maternity cover, teaching kids how to play music in a school. So there are lots of different just areas where I've kind of looked into stuff. And what I found, another thing that I found as well, is like, no matter what you step into, there's a set of, I guess, universal expectations that people believe to be true that are just absolutely shattered the minute you step into that arena and go, So I was talking to a friend the other day about the fact that, I went to university and there was so much weight placed on how important a degree is going to be in your life. I have had many, many jobs since leaving university, and not once has anyone ever asked to see proof of my degree. So I am quite confident, I won't do it because I'm too honest, but I'm quite confident that I could apply for a job and say that I received a first in, I don't know, Latin or shoemaking, and I would be able to use that to get into a job because no one checks. As long
as you don't go for like a surgeon's position.
Yeah, no, not twice. It didn't end well last time. 0-1.
So you're talking a lot about lots of different careers, jobs. Talk me through a few of your jobs that you've had in the past, and how the skills that what skills have you picked up from your many different careers, for the sounds of it?
Oh, this is a job interview.
Yeah. Why do you want to be the host of the Activated Authors podcast?
I can.
That's fair.
So my first job, I was 13, paper round, as is somewhat standard for Brits. I don't know what it's like for the rest of the world, but I don't know why I was really excited to work and earn money. Again, like, I don't know where that came from. It was just, I guess, the freedom, it's
a reoccurring theme.
Yeah. But yeah, I was 13. I would get up at 6 o'clock every morning. It was a really easy paper round. It was 13 papers. Like, I'd go and collect them.
Oh my God. 13
papers, and I got £8.50 a week.
You had it set. Oh my God. At 14? Bloody Rockefeller.
That's 7 days work for £8.50. The money was
13
fantastic.
Papers. Like,
yeah, but it was still like 35 minutes of my time a day.
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
So I was vastly underpaid. But so I did that for a few years, and like, I gotta be careful here because this interview is just gonna be a whole slander on my brother. I love him; he's an amazing person now. But yeah, so I did that for a few years, earning $8.50, just getting up early because I was an early riser as a kid. And then when I was 15, I had the opportunity to take over, going in earlier in the morning, preparing the other paper guys round. So I would go in, I'd do that, and I started making £30 a week. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit better. Was it? Yeah, it was about £30 a week. And then at the same time, we did work experience at school, and I work experienced in an estate agent's for a month. Side note, at one point, I got some water in a kettle, boiled it, short circuited the entire office for 2 hours. But for some reason, they kept me on, gave me a job. Go on.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Number one, you did work experience for a month.
Mm-hmm.
We only did 2 weeks. Secondly, I also
might have been 2 weeks.
I also had work experience in estate agents, and I also, I'm not lying, had an incident with a kettle. But my incident was my incident was I made everybody tea and then fell down the stairs with the tray of boiling hot tea and the teapot kettle, and just completely covered myself in scalding water and tea. And I can still remember exactly what I was wearing. It was a blue, like, weird ass material shirt, and also a strange material skirt. I was trying to be grown up, and I went arse over tit down them stairs. Sorry,
that's not what you want.
No, it wasn't. You're quite right. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No, that's
estate
fine.
Agents for a suspiciously long amount of time.
No, it might have been 2 weeks. but yeah, they kept me on afterwards. I'd go in for one afternoon a week and also delivered flyers for them. So like at 15, I was earning, I think it was £50 a week, which was very, very nice at that time.
Yeah.
But I only did that for a few months before kind of going, this is quite a lot for a 15-year-old. But I mean, in terms of that, like I learned very early on just to get up and do the job, because that's what you do to earn money. You have to turn up, you have to present yourself, you have to be there, and also just know what the limits of your job are. Like it was such an easy job. You just get up, walk around, deliver a few papers. At Christmas, you get a few nice tips, and that was great. And then I'm trying to think where I went from there. I temped at Toys R Us over Christmas, and what I learned from that was that I respected the customers too much to live by their ethos. And what I believed was going to be one of the happiest jobs of my life, because it's Toys R Us, was arguably the most miserable, because of the fact that they were very, very, because it was over the Christmas period, they were very pushy in you approaching everyone and trying to like draw the sale. And knowing who I am as a shopper, like I like to go in and just look at stuff, like leave me alone until I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like it makes me uncomfortable. I'm gonna be careful of like how I talk about some of these businesses, but there's
Toys R Us are defunct now.
I know, but there's a video game store that is quite big in the UK, and their ethos is the minute you walk in, hello, can I help you with anything? And I'm like, yeah, just let me have a moment. So I think at that point I started going like putting myself in the shoes of the customer and going, because I found it really difficult to draw sales, because I was like, you know, do you need anything? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, like leave me to it. I worked at Woolworths for a while, and again, just learned, you know, you just, especially in those sort of jobs, you get on with the job, you do what you need to, like there's no need to extend beyond the boundaries of what you're asked to do, because your job is to do whatever it is the manager needs you to do to run the store. Like you are essentially a minion. And then yeah, I'm trying to think where I went from there. Like I worked in a lot of bars, and found myself going, I started off working at the counter serving people, and then what I realized was I really enjoyed collecting glasses and just washing the glasses, because it was a really mindless task for me. Anyhow, so like rather than being very, very engaged in serving people, because I was at university at the time and I was doing a lot in the daytime, I'd then ask for that job, which no one wanted to do, but I was very eager to be like, I'll do it, because it allowed me to switch off. And in that time, it really like helped my mind to think and to process and to just think ahead to the next day, and just, you know, switch off, and the shifts will go quicker because you're not dealing with, you know, drunk people. But I mean, in terms of actual transferable skills, you know, you've got working with people, you've got watching like the management structures and the leaderships and understanding how they work. Communication is huge, like customer service, because you learn very, very quickly that number one, the customer, I don't fully believe in this saying, but I get where it comes from. The customer is always right until they're wrong. But also the importance of setting expectations and delivering on expectations. The whole idea of under promise and over deliver is always going to get you in much better position than telling someone you can give them the world and then just falling short, because people will believe what it is that you tell them to do. And if they're happy to accept like the less of you and then you give them more, like they're just going to be delighted the whole time and surprised. Handling money, arithmetic, like so many transferable skills. But I think the key part of all of that is it really gave me an insight into people, different types of people, especially, you know, go from I worked in a DIY store at college, so a lot of the clientele was older, particularly older gentlemen, and then sometimes older ladies would come in and I kind of like help them and just talk to them, and they would love to tell you about their day. Drunken teenagers, worked with them. I worked in sort of the more corporate office at university and got the landscape of that. So I've been around a lot of different people, and I've seen a lot of different ways that people live. And it's that kind of experience that I try to bring to Activated Authors in. I'm trying to understand where people are in their journey, in their life, so that you can, you know, empathize and draw out what they're after while still encompassing what their life is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And you just touched on Activated Authors there, and that's actually where I was going to go next. There is a method to my madness, although I would just like to say, because I feel that if this is someone's first experience hearing you talk about your past jobs, I do feel like you missed out the best one.
Oh, I was a chlamydia screening assistant for
There we go.
6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't do the screenings, right? They were self-administered.
No. So to be fair, that was probably one of my favorite jobs. I was 18. I was a few months into uni, and the pay was very, very good. But like the important part of that is I used to stand out in the street, in nightclubs, at fetes and bazaars, and just offer chlamydia tests to people in exchange for like free pants and key rings and things. And one of the things I loved about that job was you really get over yourself and your fears of approaching people, because you have to for the job. Like you have to approach people and try and draw them in. And again, not in that sort of sleazy way that you get with some marketers. We're not asking for money here. We're just providing a service. And at the time in Lincolnshire, it was sort of, I think the chlamydia rate was like 1 in 9 people had chlamydia.
That tracks. I grew up in northeast Lincolnshire, and quite frankly, that's dramatically lower than I expected it to be.
Yeah, well, it depends if you go to the city versus the more rural areas. Yeah. But in the time that I was there, it went from 1 in 9 to I think 1 in 16, which is a fantastic effort by that company, Terence Higgins Trust, because they still do a lot of work with providing services for those suffering from HIV/AIDS. That's kind of where that charity sprang from. And yeah, like when you learn to approach random people in a bar and talk about sexual health, that kind of takes down the barrier of a lot of conversations you're scared of having. And over time, you get to have fun with it. And what I found interesting was you stand in the street, and actually it's the people that you think aren't going to get into a conversation with you are the people that will, and the people that like you think are approachable and friendly will often sort of shoulder you off. So yeah, that was a real fun job. Just I kind of went from team member to team leader in that, and as I say, it was you just talk to a lot of people, you share stories, and you get to know a bit more of what is essentially like the taboo, I guess, side of life that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah. So you start writing properly in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
You go full-time in 2019, which is quite frankly the perfect time, because then you go into the easiest few years anyone's ever had.
Nothing happened in 2020.
No, literally nothing happened. That was the problem. So you find yourself going from corporate job to where I assume you are used to being surrounded by people, for better or for worse. And now you're basically in lockdown. And it's not like, it's kind of like having a snow day when you live next to the school. You get no benefit from it. You still have to go in because you live right next door. So you're working for yourself now and you can't go out. How did that affect your productivity?
My productivity went through the roof. There was nothing else to do. It was a strange few years for other reasons as well. But like, yes, I went full-time April 2019, and it was March 2020 that everything locked down. I moved into my own house around December of 2019 as well. So I was getting used to living on my own at a point in which you had to learn to isolate yourself. And so it really wasn't an easy period at all. But I think what helped was that because a lot of stuff around that time for me personally was quite new, and exciting is definitely the wrong word, but there was a lot more potential and freedom that I had. I definitely had that sort of extra wind of, okay, what can I do with this time? And then when the pandemic was announced and everything, locked down, it really was no other word, I guess, than turbulent. I wrote a lot. Like I did my best to stick to some kind of schedule. I had to share care of my son around that time and do homeschooling as well. So if anything, on the weeks that I had him, I'd be getting up early to do my work as much as I could before sort of doing stuff with him and spending the day with him. And then I'd do stuff in the evenings. And then on the time off that I had, like I could sit and I could watch TV, I could go for a walk, I could do all those things. And I did all those things, but I ended up writing about 26 books that year, of varying length. I will add that because
please do, a varying length. Jesus.
A varying, some 20k, a few 80ks, But it was that was what I had. And because when you run your own business, you are responsible for your income and for trudging on and doing all the things. I did all the things, and I also found
all of them. You completed the things.
Yeah, and I also found around that year as well, I kind of got into the groove of writing nonfiction as well. So I was able to write fiction in the morning, then nonfiction in the afternoon, and kind of just find the joy in writing. So yeah, my productivity went through the roof. I wouldn't go through it again, thank you. But I did my best during that time to keep in touch with family, like obviously the Zoom calls and like the obligatory Zoom calls. I went out for lots of walks with my son, because luckily my house backed onto a forest, so you can kind of be...
Just disclaimer, just one walk a day though.
Just no, not at all. Because like I said, I backed onto a forest, so you weren't likely to bump into anyone, because it wasn't like a commercialized forest. It was quite a virgin forest with a bit of a trail through it, and so did a lot of that. But yeah, it was definitely a trialing year, and one that I have learned a lot from.
Yeah, and on that, so you wrote 26 plus books casually, not casually, I imagine. And at the beginning of the year, I imagine you would have had some kind of, like if I'd have asked you at the beginning of 2020, before we knew the pandemic was like looming at us, what your idea of like productivity was, I imagine that had shifted somewhat by the end of 2020. Am I presuming, or do you think that stayed consistent?
2020 is very much a blur for me.
Yeah. Those 26 books that you wrote.
Yeah. As I kind of allude to, that I won't dive into too much, it was like big personal shifts in that time as well. But I had to kind of go through. But I mean, yeah, because I think mostly I learned what my capacity was.
Yes.
And I learned, like, I don't necessarily feel like I hit a ceiling. I feel like, if I wanted to, I could have done more. I didn't want to. Believe me, like, there are other things you want to do. But yeah, it definitely set a bar. And with it being such a blur, and I think lots of people found this in the pandemic, like time really did stretch and shrink and accordion, and like 1 minute a week had passed, the next minute it was 3 hours. Like, it's really difficult to keep a track on what was going on. And so all I can say for that period is I know how far I can go if I push myself. I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of what I'm trying to head towards, really, because not only did you write 26 books, but you thought, you know what, that's not quite enough for me. So I'm also going to start a podcast.
Yep. Next Level Authors with Sasha Black. Yeah.
And then towards the end of the year, you thought, this isn't enough for me. Why don't I don't know, coach a group of authors through NaNoWriMo Bootcamp? So what was going through your head when you were like, I think I would like to bring in a group of authors and help them write 50,000 words? Because we all know that that's difficult. Well, 26 books over here, maybe not. But so what was that process like? If you can remember, you have just said it was a blur.
No, I mean, to be fair, I've gone back recently and re-listened to the Next Level Authors podcast episode from around that time, just because that was like, it was a real pivotal year in the sense of my mindset and returning back to working with other people. Because I worked in my previous job for 5 years, being surrounded by people, being surrounded by a team. I had lots of personal stuff going on in the background, in which like I really didn't ever have time to myself unless it was like an hour that I forced myself to have in the morning. And so when I went full time, a lot of my intention was just to write books and just to, live the author life, like the nomadic author life, sort of go cafe hop, work on books, hang up the laptop at the end of the day and just carry on. And then I think because of the pandemic, it got to that point where I realized that, you know, community and social life means something, and being surrounded by other people and knowing other people are out there is a very vital part of just life itself. Like we humans are social creatures. That's how we're raised. That's, you know, what we were to begin with. That's what we are now. It's very, very difficult to live in isolation, and you know, there are many studies that prove that actually if you live alone, if you isolate yourself, your life expectancy will be vastly decreased as opposed to those people who are like surrounded by people.
Wow, way to slap me across the face while I'm doing your job for you.
You birthed your own person.
Oh,
you're not alone.
Count. Oh, that's true. I'm never alone.
But yeah, I mean, so the point being that, you know, I became very aware of, in a pandemic, because I hadn't plans to spend most of my 2020 alone. Like, no? I had plans for parties. I had like all these plans I had to cancel. And so I was like, you know what, I've spent the last few years in the writing community, watching, you know, people help writers. I've got experience in coaching. Like, I'm confident that I'm productive enough that I can help get people through Nano. And so I launched it, and it was a real turning point for me, because it was kind of that re-entry back into working around other people again.
Yeah.
And, you know, you were part of that boot camp. Like, you can attest to, there was something magic about that first boot camp. Like, the people that were involved, just the attitude, the fun, like just the tempo, everything just came together, which is a rare thing to see. And I, from then on, kind of fell into helping other writers because everyone basically demanded that it continue.
Yes, I was one of those people. I remember demanding. Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like, I guess, the biggest mind shift towards the end of 2020 was going, okay, I've got two choices here. I can either carry on by myself writing lots and lots and lots of stuff, or I can try to give some of this back to the author community, and also, you know, meet other writers and help other writers and give people the hand that I had from other people when I was, you know, a fledgling writer and trying to make it.
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. Activated Authors, that is basically born from the boot camp, right?
Yes.
Like, the boot camp is born from the pandemic. Everything's born from everything.
Oh my God. Cycle of destruction.
Yeah. So what about Activated Authors? Because I still remember us having the conversation. You were very excited about it, and we were kind of, you know, we were going back and forwards. You were throwing ideas at me, and I was saying, yes, good idea. What was it from like the inception of bootcamp and the lessons that you learned from 2020 about kind of community, about being surrounded by not just people, but the right people, about, did I say productivity? Possibly. What have you learned from all of those, and how have you crafted that into what is now Activated Authors?
Oh, there's a lot to this.
Yeah.
And I'll be fully transparent, because obviously there are two essential, like, big arms of this. Number one is community is huge. I'm not just saying that as someone who runs community. The reason I started the community is because I genuinely really see the benefits of it. And, you know, we saw it in Nano. I've been parts of communities as I've gone through my author journey. There's something, and Renee kind of touched on it in last week's interview. There's something magic about being surrounded by the people who are doing the thing that you want to do. Like, very few people, friends and family in my life, understand what writing is. Like, I had a conversation with a friend recently, and it was like, oh, how's the work going? And I was like, well, yeah, good. Like, I'm doing this, and then, you know, I've got a virtual assistant, yourself, to help with a lot of stuff behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. And his response was, what, you really that busy? Yes, and it's not just writing. I'm growing a business here. And I've had conversations with people who still think that, you know, my time is entirely flexible, that I just write whenever I want, get up, just tap the keyboard for a bit and then go to bed. And that's not it. So being around people who understand the struggles of what the creative life is, and particularly a lot of the people in our community are self-published or self-publishing authors, although we have people seeking traditional as well. But just understanding that real need and drive to create worlds, to create fiction, to put stuff out there. And particularly with the live writing sprints we do, it's just that chance to check in with people, to hold a point of accountability where you know that even so, something I discovered, which I didn't understand to start with, but it just makes total sense the more I think about it, is that sometimes you need permission to claim your own time.
Yes, you do.
So if you're in a relationship, it's sometimes difficult to go, I'm off for an hour to write some words. Oh, well, why don't you spend time with me? Why don't we do this or whatever? And Activated Authors actually provides a, like, not even an excuse, but like a reason to be going, because it's like, this happens at this time. This is the thing I'm committed to. And it adds a certain amount of gravitas to the people sometimes you're trying to convince to, you know, let you have the time that you want to do the thing that you want to do. And, you know, there's lots of stuff in that we can go into, but we probably won't have the time in this one. So, I mean, yeah, just generally community, being surrounded by the people you know. I learned quite early on, you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So, you know, I include people like YouTubers and podcast hosts and people that I read in that, because if I'm at one point, Tim Ferriss was one of my people, because I just listened to him nonstop and went through so much of his back catalogue. But you find yourself absorbing the energy of those around you. So if you're surrounded by authors who are going for it, who are activated, the point of Activated Authors, I'm not just trying to make a plug there, but the real heart of Activated Authors is these people are committed to their writing. They are people that are putting in the work day after day. Like, some are slower, some are faster, varying different levels of success. The thing that unites us all is that we are writers and we're here together. And there's something really powerful in that. And, you know, when you get feedback from people saying my productivity has tripled in the month since I've joined Activated Authors, you just go, yes, this is what it's for. And so providing that as a platform, then also, like, let's be really transparent here at the same time. Writing is a very, use that word again, turbulent business to be in, especially if you're trying to make your money from fiction. So, you know, every month your royalties are going to go up, they're going to go down. Like, the market dictates a lot of what's going on. You have to put a lot of your time and energy into advertising your books, which, you know, authors do. And part of the reason for Activated Authors as well, like on my side, is that it really helps me build a stable foundation from which I can then spring off and do the rest. So I have the confirmation to know that I'm helping authors in the way that I know how. Everything that I've done with Activated Authors has been with my limits in mind and capitalizing on my strengths and really trying to build systems that minimize the friction in helping deliver the value that I want to deliver.
Yes.
And hopefully, I argue that I over deliver in the community as much as I can. But as more people pour into Activated Authors, that sort of raft for me grows, and then I have more capacity to run off and do other things to help authors. So there is that side of it as well, in which, you know, I've built a system very, very specifically for my situation that will allow me to feed my own creativity, support other authors, and also just keep adding value where I can. So, you know, there's a lot that was learned over the last couple of years from looking at other people's businesses, being part of different communities myself, and seeing what they're doing, what I like of them and what I don't. And something that I've learned along that journey is, you know, it has to work for me. There's no point me building a business that's going to make me miserable. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So we've had conversations before where, you know, there's always going to be parts of the business where it's harder, or it's stuff that you don't like. Like, I'm not really a big fan of financial reconciliation at the end of each month. Like, that could suck it. But like, I do it. And, you know, sometimes you want to reach out and ask for help, but you have to accept, like, it's your business, it's your responsibility, apart from some of the core fundamental things, which eventually I'll be able to outsource. Like, if you don't like something, find a new way to do it, or find the best way, the best medium to do it. Even this podcast, Activated Authors, springs off of Great Writer Share, and the format and how I run it now and everything else is very, very different to Great Writer Share, more so behind the scenes, because of the things that I've learned and how I now manage my time, how I say no to things, which I'm still working on.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. But if anything, the last 3 years really kind of has just been this build up to recognizing the things I'm good at, the things I'm not, and where I want to go from here. So lots of lessons, really.
Yeah. And what is your definition of productivity now?
So the broader definition of productivity, how do you increase your outputs while decreasing your inputs? How can you get more out of doing less? When I first started to look at productivity, it was very much, how can I just squeeze everything out of my day? And I did that until I was dry. And it did not end well. And now it's much more about, how can I increase the amount of impact I have while decreasing the impact that will have on me, if that makes sense. So I'm really focused on trying to narrow down the right thing to work on, because I spent the first couple of years writing lots of books, and that was just what I did. I wrote. Pandemic, there's not a lot of option for socializing, and I'm still working on that in the minute, because trying to integrate back into society, like, sounds dramatic, but it's difficult, especially getting back into crowds and get more used to just seeing people on the regular. I am finding that quite difficult. So it's now become much more, how do I narrow my focus? Because I was doing so much at one point in lots of different directions, and I wanted to do all these different things. And at the beginning of 2021, I essentially threw everything up on a whiteboard, scrapped a load of stuff I was working on, and went, where can I start? Like, what is the one thing to begin with? And I carved that kind of path. And where I've come around to now is accepting that I'm not going to be able to do all the things that I want to do. And that's okay, because every yes means a million plus no's. And that's a truth that I have to accept and be comfortable with. But I will say that, since officially establishing Activated Authors as it is back in September of last year, it has made it much easier to know my mission and my goal, seeing the support and what it is offering the authors in the community. It is really, really rewarding to see people thriving and excelling and building community and finding friends and all that kind of stuff. And so, productivity for me is, well, I guess simply put, it's how can I make a life worth living by reducing how miserable I have to be. There you go. Nice and uplifting for you.
Oh gosh, just give me a second. I'm just going to call bloody Oxford and Cambridge up because they need to reassess. I'll get Collins on the call as well. That's incredible.
Well, so here's the thing, like, we don't have to work 70-hour weeks to do good things. People who have 12 hours a week can achieve greatness. If you find the thing that is giving you the biggest push towards what you're trying to achieve and focus on it in a world that is currently filled with distractions and designed to distract us, even just I heard someone say the other day, so we often think of like our phones as tools to help us be productive, but the thing about a tool is it doesn't demand your attention. Like a hammer won't beep for you to smash a wall.
No, although I have, to be fair, I have.
I've been there. It wasn't a hammer. No. But the point being, we have to acknowledge how distracting this world is. I just constantly have been finding more and more how overwhelming it can be to be on multiple messaging platforms. Like I'm blessed in the sense of having like lots of friends and people that I can talk to. But at the same time, like when you get to the end of the day, if you haven't touched your notifications and you see like 100, 200 different notifications of different things, that's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much.
God.
And where I'm really working to is just getting up in the morning, prioritizing the thing that will move that needle forward, focusing on that, phone off, distractions off, and then making it happen. Because 1 hour working focused on something that means something to you will be 5 hours of Netflix, of PlayStation, of scrolling through your phone, of whatever it is. And it's a never-ending journey, and I fight with it constantly. And I'm by no means perfect. Like I know what to do, but sometimes the system beats you. But yeah, it's just I just want to live a happy life. I just want to enjoy what I do. I want to have the time to take walks, to see family, to see friends, to work and help people, but in a way in which I'm not giving myself a heart attack.
Amazing. Okay, well, I've got one more question for you before we round off, and I think you know what's coming.
Possibly.
Because
I'm an Aries. Is that it? Did I get it?
There's no point me asking the goddamn question now. You just ruined your own podcast. Congratulations. So, before we ask about where we can find out more about you and Activated Authors and all that good stuff, Daniel Willcocks, why do you write, and why do you help others to do the same?
I think both answers will kind of sink within themselves. There is something incredibly cathartic about writing, about having a safe place to capture thought and idea. I remember going through quite a messy breakup back in university, and this was before I kind of even conceptualized possibly writing fiction and things. And I found myself late one night at my laptop just writing down, it was kind of flow of consciousness.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. Of how I was feeling, all the different things. It was a piece that was never finished, but in a way that's what made it finished. But writing just was the channel to help me capture the pain and the heartbreak and everything else that was going on. And even now, like short stories for me, it's just, I love playing with words. I love trying to better myself each time I write a story. I love reading stories and then going like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is where I'm trying to get to. And then, entertaining readers, there's nothing more magic about that. But I think the reason I help other writers is I've seen a lot of people's fires die. I've seen a lot of people fall victim to becoming what they believe the world wants them to be and the way that the world, quote, should be. And then I see these people years and years later returning back to the page, returning back to the instrument, returning back to whatever creative outlet it is, and coming alive again and rediscovering a part of themselves that they've lost. Like, I've got a friend who was an incredible singer at school, played music, hasn't touched an instrument in years because of life. Always talks about it. And they've recently returned to their instrument and really found that happiness. And it's so difficult to explain to people that don't get it what that feels like. And so if I can help people understand that there's a place for them to be them in a safe environment, whether that's expressing through poetry, through journaling, through writing, whatever it is, then why not give that to people? Because that is one of my tools for life.
That's beautiful. Okay, so before we do the outro, please tell all the wonderful people that are listening and potentially watching, how can they find out more about you and more about Activate Authors?
So everything that I do is over at danielwillcocks.com, which is WILLCOCKS, which, you've got my books on there, my podcasts, bits on how I help writers. But then if you're a writer and you want to find out all about Activated Authors, then head over to activatedauthors.com, and everything that we've got going on is over there. And by all means, I also offer 15-minute free consultations where you literally just, no charge at all. You can sit down with me for 15 minutes. We can chat about your writing and what your next steps are and take it from there. So yeah, those two places.
Awesome. And I would just quickly like to say as well, because I've had one of these consultations a while back. And the thing that I found the most impressive, because when people say like no pressure, there's still pressure. But actually, I tried to sign up to the thing that I was having a consultation for on the call, and you just refused to let me make the decision on the call. So I just wanted to put that out there, because a lot of the time when you hear like no obligation, you're like, yeah, of course there isn't.
Yeah, I really try to be what you see is what you get. So
yeah,
if you jump on a call, expect this, Dan. That's what you get.
Awesome. I am now going to seamlessly segue into the outro.
It's nice to know you've been watching these.
Yeah. So I would like to say a big thank you to Dan for joining me on the podcast today. A massive thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in. And as always, if you are looking to level up your writing and activate your author career, then head on over to activatedauthors.com to find out all about our community, our resources, and everything else that we've got going on. And we will see you next week. Well, he will. I probably won't.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Activate your energy.